So this is the first day of installing the dump trestle. We got a couple days here to do it. What I'm gonna do here is I've got this piece of foam in here that's not glued down, and I'm gonna glue the trestle in a few key locations. For example, this first section here has to meet the backdrop, so I've got that pushed up tight, and I'll get the concrete footings in for that. You know, I got it raised up on some of this foam core here to make it be the correct level, so I'll glue all that in, and I'm going to glue in the first pier there, and then I can go down here and do the coke section down here and do the same thing. And then what I'll do is I'll make sure they're all lined up. I'll put the middle section in, I'll sight down, make sure a few key piers are glued in. Then I'll take the whole thing out, and we're going to flip it around and go over on a bench and actually glue in all the rest of them so I can make sure they're all the correct heights and they're all straight and everything. And then I'm going to fill in with plaster cloth and, you know, scenery between all that. I'm not going to do finished scenery, but I'll get it really close so that we can come back and then put it all back in, make sure it all lines up. Make sure it runs, dump some coal hoppers, then take it all back out and then do the finished painting, scenery, and detailing of the trestle, and then put it all back in again. So I'm going to get these marked here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just marking on some of this foam here, and I'm going to tack in some of these pieces here. For these, I'll use hot glue just because I don't care if it melts them up. They won't be seen. But when I do these other ones in here, they won't be seen either, but I'll probably do something a little slower setting that'll be stronger bonds that way. The hot glue tends to kind of melt things and distort things sometimes. So I want to keep it as straight as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this and glue this and get this out of here. Okay, the tipple has been installed so that a few key piers are put in there, and they've been tacked down with a heavy blob of hot glue. And before I touch anything, I am going to let all of that set up. So you can see there, let's see, where's one here, there, right there. So they're all glued in a few key places, just enough to get it so that they don't move. Now I'll get this taken out of here when it cools off, and we'll finish all the stuff in the areas that have been left open. Okay, so this is the second morning, and you can see I've been gluing in the piers here. What I've been having to do on some of these is do minor shimming using different thicknesses of cardboard just to make sure they're all really tight to the bottom of the bents. Also had to make sure this was flush with the face of the foam here so that it didn't get crooked. There's a pin in the base of this one here to keep this thing from sliding because I found that it was moving as I was working on it, and then I'm using some various different weights on here to make sure it's down on the piers and I'm not shimming up too high. So, oops, it's a lot of balance when I put that heavy weight back there, but so it's going okay. I've had to take, some of these aren't glued in yet. I somehow lost one. I didn't paint one of them, and I look back at my Facebook pictures and I see that indeed at some point I didn't paint one. It was that one there. But hopefully later today we're going to get this back on the layout, and we're going to start finishing up the rails on there. I think the goal by tonight is to be able to put this in place and at least maybe run a train out on it. I don't know if I'll be dumping coal, but the goal is still coal by tomorrow. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do here to get this to be smooth faster than painting and priming and sanding 3 coats. So I'm going to take a little bit of 3D printing resin. I'm going to use a cheap brush here and brush a light coat on, cure this side, and then I'm going to flip it over and put some on the other side. Kind of feel like I'm living a model railroad reality show here. So if I don't get this done, I'm going to lose the shop. Okay. The thinner you make that, I think the faster it will cure. So I'm going to go throw this in my curing oven, and we'll come back and take a look at it. Okay, that looks like that actually worked pretty good. So I got a coat on this side, and then I'm going to coat this side up, and then I'll put it back in there, and then I'll have to do the top and stand it upright. So get this side. So I left a lump there, a drip that hardened, so I'm going to have to be a little more careful that I don't have drips, although this stuff sands incredibly easy. It's one of the reasons why I want to use it, is it makes a great surface filler. I should probably pour this in a cup, but I don't have a cup. I don't want to go find one. This stuff also levels pretty nice too. So I'll smooth out any drips on both sides and I'll stick it in there. I actually find that if I do stuff like this, when it's thick like this, putting it out in the sun works better, but it's not sunny outside. Not that there still isn't UV rays, but okay, I'm going to go throw this in for a couple minutes and see how this hardens up. One other step I'd like to do here to get this dump trestle working is I'd like to install the 2 tortoise switch machines, one for this turnout and one down there on that turnout that's going to be coming off of there. I never did put those in. I just had them spiked over to one side, but I think if I'm going to be using this, I should just get it in there. One of the things I do here is I don't need to put any kind of special mount underneath the layout here because this is just 1/2-inch plywood. But I do like to update or upgrade the spring wire here. So I'm using a 30,000 steel wire. It just means I have to drill out that hole with I'm using like a 35 thousandths drill bit. I find that with the O-scale stuff, since I have to throw the turnout just a little bit farther, I like the stronger wire. So I'm going to show you guys a cool little trick that I've got. I use this a lot for sticking things through holes when I got to go up through the layout here with this throw wire here. And it's really hard to find the hole in the throw bar because it's up there somewhere. What I actually do is I take another piece of wire and I make sure the ends of both of these are nice and squared off. So this is just another scrap piece of the same 30 thousandths wire. And I'm going to stick it down through the top so it pokes out. So here's that wire sticking down right here. And if you take the ends of the 2 wires, they have to be squared off to do this, and you push them on each other. And you kind of push down on the top one as you're pushing up with the bottom one, just very light pressure. They'll actually just find their hole and go right through. And I'll show you the top here to show you what I mean. I don't know if you can see it down in there, but it's perfectly in that hole. I did that one try. Okay, well, I've got this back in and I'm test fitting it just to make sure everything's lining up after I've glued all these in. So I just put one section of bridge in there. And now the plan is to put a back on here so I can attach strips of cardboard down in here so I can get this all plastered up, and then that'll be it for the night. Then tomorrow when it's dry, we'll come back in and we'll start gluing the bridge all into one piece and getting this rail spiked all the way across there. I've been kind of taking little breaks on that. I've got this turnout down here all done. I've got the switch machine down in there, and I've got the hair in there, the hair decoder in there, and I've got it all wired up and programmed. So I'm going to go ahead now and get this section out of here and start working on the scenery. Here I've started to put the cardboard strips on for the hillside, and what I've been doing is just hot gluing them down the sides of these concrete piers. You can see how just these tips are going to stick out. And I've just been going along. I just run a bead of hot glue, kind of where I want the top surface to be, and then I just stick it in there and hold it for a few seconds. Once all these dry, then I'm going to go ahead and fasten them in on the other ends. Okay, so here is all the lattice work in. There's a lot more than a normal spot because I had to put one strip on each side of every pier. So there's 19 piers, not counting the ones for the coal bin down there, and so each one of those 19 had 2 strips of cardboard to put in down there, and then I had to weave it all in. And then I kind of came in a little farther than I had planned because I just wanted to make sure the slope was going to work right here. And I've got the slope starting up underneath this piece that sticks out here so that it continues with a real natural slope, and then I'll build a retaining wall. I guess they had like a concrete or a abutment or whatever you want to call those on both ends there. And then I brought it a little bit farther down here just to make sure it was all going to flow in here correctly. So that took a lot longer than I thought. So now I'm going to get putting the plaster strips on, and then we'll get the bridge back in there. I also did cut the hole down in there so the coal can go down through underneath there. And I built the shelf that's going to go underneath there to hold the bucket. So we're going to get the plaster in first, then I'll get the bucket shelf in after that. Okay, well, Thanksgiving has come and gone. This is the day after, and I didn't get it done. But I'm still kind of holding on to the fact that by the end of my Thanksgiving long weekend, I'll have it dumping coal here. So I'm taking the dump trestle back out. I fitted in after the plaster is in. I am making the pipe that goes down through that hole right now. It's on the printer. And at this moment, what I'm going to do is I'm just making a few adjustments on the trestle. I'm going to actually be gluing all 3 sections together and spiking the rails all the way across. I have just enough spikes, I think, to do the narrow gauge and make it functional here. So the other thing I got to do is I have that turnout way down there, all in, the tortoise is in, and the hair mobile or a stationary decoder is installed and programmed. And now I'm just working on this one here. And I'm going to get that one installed and wired up here and programmed. Then I'll be able to actually just run through here like normal. And I did this one here too this morning. This one's all hooked up. So it should be good because the other 2 down there, all the ones in the main line are done. I didn't do this one yet. Obviously, there's no turnout even there. But one of the things I did here, as you can see, I'm going to be putting a road in right here. It might be a little bit on the steep side, but it's not too unexpected for the area here. But this road will cross over the tracks here and come up and go on a road that kind of went this way here. And that'll be partially on the edge right here. You'll see it kind of be going uphill, and you'll just see it come up and meet this corner here. And then I'll slope that scenery down and kind of tie all that in. So, but that's ways away. I ran out of plaster. Good thing. I would have probably kept going until I hit the end, and I really need to focus on this here. So I'm going to clean up the plaster on here before I put this back in, because I have plaster on the abutments from putting the plaster cloth in. And then I'll get the bridge set in and glued in and spiked down and wired up. So hopefully this goes well here. So this is what you see at Sewell today. You just see these strange shapes all poking out of the hillside. So it kind of looks like Sewell in the wintertime here. So I just thought I'd take a shot of that. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Okay, so getting a little farther here. I pulled out the controls for from the old layout. I just temporarily screwed it to the riser here and temporarily hooked up some power here. This is a wire that's going back under the layout and up to the tipple. So now we at least have doors opening and closing. And now I just gotta kind of get everything installed here. We're getting really close. The other thing I did here is I installed the shelf for the bucket. And what's kind of neat about that is that the bucket can actually be accessed from the other side. So I'll be dumping coal from the Sewell side, and then I can actually take the bucket out on the clifftop side to fill the coal tipple over there. That's just a piece of PEX tubing coming down. I had to cut away a little bit of the L girder up there to get that to clear. But that's going to work pretty good right there, I think. Well, this is the end of the last night. Tomorrow will be my last day working on this. And what I'm doing here is I'm just filling up cross braces in the areas because I've attached these sections together. And the other thing I'm doing down here is this little bit of track here needed some realignment because I brought this in a little closer, which is I'm really happy about. That was a little too sharp. So I will have to trim this off once I get the ties set on here. So when the bridge does come out, I'll have to zip that off there. I carefully sliced off the ties that were here, cleaned the glue off the bottoms. I'm going to be gluing these back in here so that way the colors all kind of match in here. And then again, I got that in, and that's just temporary. I'll make a better one. I already talked about that. I'll actually make 2. Contacts are working. The rails are spiked all the way from there to about there on this end. And especially down on there, I've fixed the alignment and all that's looking good. Tomorrow, what I'll do is I'll close the gap up here. There's a really small so these rails over here overlap, but there's a really short gap here, but I don't want to have two rail joiners in a row. So I'll probably cut it back here somewhere so it's not so obvious. What's nice about those is that the joints or the rails are spanning the joints, so that'll make these stronger. I'll probably spike, if I have enough left to do this whole thing. I'm really low on the micro spikes, but if I have enough, I will spike several ties on each side of each one of these joints here just to make sure it's strong. So tomorrow morning, I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to finish all the spiking, and then I've got just this one last switch machine that's been giving me a little bit of a fuss here, simply because last year when I started this, I cut this road bed right here, the plywood sub road bed, so that I can make an adjustment down here. And when I glued it back together, I glued it together with a splice plate down there. And what I didn't realize that was going to cause a problem with the tortoise that was going to be mounted there. So I printed another remote mount of a different type. And this one, the tortoise will be mounted out here, and then this wire will connect to the tortoise, and it will throw that pivot back and forth from here. So that's actually working good. I only had to just do an adjustment on the arm that I'm mounting on the tortoise. It's on the printer right now. It'll be out tomorrow. I'll get that in, and I'll get its power. I actually have its mobile decoder already actually wired up and programmed, so I just got to plug it in and hook up the auto throw wires here. And I think we'll be ready to go with that. And then, that's probably it. I'll be dumping coal if everything goes well, but I got a lot of spiking. It's a long ways to go from here down to there with micro spikes. Even if I do every fifth tie, that's still a lot of spikes, and it's just a slow process with those micro spikes. But I'm pretty confident I can do it. I think we're going to get a train dumping coal tomorrow. So 4 12-hour days of working on trains is not the dream I thought it was going to be. So I'll be glad it's kind of over with. But this is like a year's worth of my free time getting this done, and this is a massive step ahead on this project. So looking forward to kind of moving on and not having to rush through projects like this. Okay, one little change I've been making here this morning is that I built these abutments down in here so that the ends of the trestle would be supported. And this one didn't line up. This is on the exiting, I would call it, end. So the coke, that's the coke bin, coal, coke. Train is coming this way. And because I moved these bents over a little bit to kind of straighten out this turnout here, this piece here kind of curved into this a little too sharp. So I took all the ties out, cut new stringers here, and kind of realigned this here. So I sanded off the glue on the bottom of the ties here. I'm just going to quickly glue these down so it has the same flow through here without the ties being kind of weirdly crooked in here. So get this glued in, and that's the last thing that's stopping me. I'm going to start spiking all the way down to meet up to the spikes down there. So this rail's all in, and this rail just has some spikes in it, but there'll be a narrow gauge rail in here. So it won't be long. I also have the trestle or the lift bridge wired and functioning. And this turnout here, I still have not put the switch machine in yet, but I did run the wires there is a rail here I had to take out and put a feeder wire to it because it's going to be one of the few rails that supplies power to the trestle here.